Welcome to another episode of the Muslim Bitcoiner podcast. I'm your host, Abdullah, and today our guest is Adam Mashrique. He's an electrical engineer at a Bitcoin startup, and he's also the co-founder of Bitcoiner Malaysia. And we'll get into what Bitcoiner Malaysia is and what they do later on in the podcast. So, Adam, welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, Abdullah. Thanks for having me.
So I guess just to kind of start, I like to start these podcast episodes by asking the guest of telling me about their Bitcoin journey, when they started, and how did they first get Orange Pill?
All right. Oh, this is quite a long story. I'll try to keep it short. All right. So I have multiple points where I got Orange Pill. Like there's no one definite moment. So I started like all the way back in 2013 is actually when I started trying to dive deep into Bitcoin from the technical standpoint. So my background is engineering. And like a lot of my friends, my classmates they're doing their mining stuff, and then back then I didn't know, it's like I thought Bitcoin was like another PayPal. So it's only when they started talking about mining, it's like, oh, why do you have to mine this stuff? So yeah, and then I started watching like a lot of Andres Antonopoulos videos. And I bought this textbook, Mastering Bitcoin, which is quite good. Like there's already like back then there's not a whole lot of books on Bitcoin. So yeah, that's interesting. But I started with the how of Bitcoin. So and then in 2015, I found Saifedean's blog. And in one of his blog articles, it's a chapter that's in his book that he wrote later. That chapter was it's a very defining moment for me on the why of Bitcoin. And then another article that I can think of is Vijay Boyapati's bullish case for Bitcoin. That's also quite early on. But back then, there was no Bitcoin standard. Yeah, so it's like very also like very I really lucked out in terms of and that I managed to find Saifedean's blog like at that time. I was doing some pretty heavy shitcoining also. Well, not so heavy. Just just having fun. Just screwing around with all these coins. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how a lot of us get started in Bitcoin, is that we usually go the shitcoin route. But yeah, so when did you start mining? I know you talk a lot about mining Bitcoin. When did you first start, or what made you want to start? I should also ask.
Like I'm not really doing mining like big time. I have like a few machines. I mean, I got this S9s. I got like really cheap S9s after the 2017 crash. Actually, that's when I just put it up like on and off. But this is like nowadays you need better machines. Like you can't use S9s anymore. Even during the height of the last bull market, it was already getting quite difficult. I couldn't get any profit. You're just paying the amount of you're buying Bitcoin with your electricity bill.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I think like if I were to do it now, I'd probably be mining at a loss. Yeah. So but I've people that I know I've met people that have immersion mining rigs in their house.
Oh wow.
Like they have like new this S90 machines that's still competitive at the current Malaysian tariff. So, but because the thing with these miners is that they're very loud and they're very hot.
Oh yeah.
So you have to do like this. So that there's these guys that figured out how to do immersion cooling, and then they just put it in like in their like in behind their house or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
In Malaysia, like there's a lot of mining going on in Malaysia. Some legit, some not so legit. Like a lot of people are stealing from the meter. Has become quite a big issue. But if you look at Cambridge, there's a Cambridge releases data on Bitcoin, like global Bitcoin mining. So they put Malaysia in top 10. Okay, at one time Malaysia was like top 5.
Oh wow.
Bitcoin hash power in the world. Because but I have another friend who disputes that. So he's like, yeah, he's kind of skeptical. Like he's quite a mining expert as well. So I don't know.
Oh, okay. What would you say like currently right now is it very profitable to mine Bitcoin in Malaysia? Like how are the power prices expensive there?
From the grid, no, pretty much impossible. Like you have, so the thing with Malaysia is that we have 30% of installed capacity. That means power generation is 30% above what we actually use at all times. So there's a lot of power generators and like gas generators. It's just lying. It's just not doing anything. So and also in Malaysia, there's like a lot of these independent power producers. They sell electricity to the grid operator. There's just one national grid operator, TNB. So oftentimes when their contract lapses, they probably won't get as an attractive price as they used to. So they have to figure out what other things they can use this electricity for. So there are power generation companies in Malaysia that are mining Bitcoin. So since they have their own power generation, then they don't really have, other than fuel, or maybe if they're using hydropower, then it's pretty much free.
Exactly.
It's just maintenance, yeah.
Wow.
So me knowing this, finding out about this stuff. Like there are people mining like in the middle of the jungle, like in the middle of like palm oil plantations. Like you have to ask yourself, how do you stop this?
Wow,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like in certain parts the mining is kind of decentralized in Malaysia. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
We only hear about the big time mining operations in China and US. Like you don't, but there are plenty of small time miners.
Yeah, especially if, like you said, if you can get the power for free, like from hydropower or something, that's great. Wow. So I guess I want to pivot the discussion to Bitcoiner Malaysia, because I noticed that the Twitter account for Bitcoiner Malaysia, or at least I've noticed that it was created not too long ago. And when I first saw the Twitter account come online, I was very excited. I was like, oh wow, a Bitcoin organization from Malaysia, and they're Bitcoin only. They're not shitcoining. That's a huge plus. So I guess what is Bitcoiner Malaysia, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so I started this. It's just a Telegram group between me and like a few people. I started it with like this guy Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is that because just like 3 years ago, we wanted to create a space for Bitcoin only people. Like we already have plenty of crypto blockchain groups. There's even like registered organizations, right? So I was looking for something different. I want to start something different. So I started like just a Telegram group, just like a few people that I know that's just Bitcoin only. And then we started doing meetups, like physical meetups. And then lockdown happened, and we couldn't do physical meetups anymore. But now we've restarted, and hopefully this year, we're gonna have we're gonna try to be consistent with the once a month meetups, and we even have like a coffee shop that accepts Bitcoin, and then the owner agrees to host the thing. It's just a small low key group, just to help people along with their orange pilling. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that same problem just in general with like with most Muslims in general. Whenever I look at like any kind of like Bitcoin group, it's almost always mixed with shit coins, and like and it's usually like geared for trading rather than actually talking about Bitcoin and only Bitcoin. And I also find that challenging as well, that there aren't really that many organizations out there that are Bitcoin only, and that was the case definitely back then. And it's not so much the case now, as more and more people are kind of waking up to Bitcoin only. But it's cool that it's still kind of small, it sounds like, and you guys are still growing. But it sounds like as long as the message is laser focused on Bitcoin, I think more and more people, inshallah, will hopefully want to join and learn more learn more about Bitcoin and not crypto. So just to ask about Bitcoin or Malaysia, so like it just sounds like right now it's kind of small, and you guys are just trying to do like regular meetups. Could I ask how many people typically do you guys get at your meetups, at your coffee shops?
Well, usually we get like a dozen.
Okay. Yeah. That's, all right. Neat.
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
Not a lot compared to like all the other more established Web3, just like Web3 meetups. They're doing very fancy events, and they're very well funded.
Oh yeah, that's true. I bet.
Even in the bear market, surprisingly.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is that even during a bear market, you see like these blockchain and Web3 conferences still pop up. But I mean, they're not as popular during bear markets. But they're like you said, they're well funded, and it's kind of hard to compete with that because like Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO or a head of marketing or anything. So we just kind of have to like do it from the ground up in a grassroots kind of way, like the way you guys are doing.
Roger Ver was paying people in Malaysia to host meetups on Bcash for Bcash. My concern is that Malaysia, like, or Asia in general, like some of these not so emerging economies, like fertile breeding ground for money coming from altcoin, shitcoin groups, because they couldn't really penetrate US and European scenes.
I see.
Right? So they come here, which is kind of like, and a lot of people get taken with them. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if as soon as one of these shitcoin promoters present cash, I mean, it's kind of hard to decline. And yeah, you definitely see that with a lot of altcoins. But like I said,
I mean, but on the flip side, they actually the positive thing is that they kind of get people to learn about this stuff in general, even if like they might lead them astray at some point. But I don't know. I mean, because that's how I started. So I went to Singapore. Like I went to Singapore like for like blockchain hackathon at a bank in 2015. So I mean I'm not too worried about this situation. I think people generally have time to kind of correct their course, because I think it's still very early.
Right. I see what you're saying, and yeah, I definitely feel like like a lot of Bitcoiners today, they started with the shitcoin route and they eventually found their way, and then like as people kind of come into Bitcoin, they're probably going to follow that same route. But it just feels like I notice Bitcoiners spend a lot of their time trying to convince other people that think they're Bitcoiners why they're not Bitcoiners, and that it's like, no, you're still involved in shitcoining. You don't actually get the innovation of Bitcoin. Bitcoiners spend a lot of their time whenever they're interacting with like shitcoiners, is trying to get them to unlearn what they think they know about things like blockchain and Web3, and actually try to get them to see that the actual innovation of Bitcoin.
The thing with that is that it's hard because it's very technical. Like unless you're someone like me, because I've spent a lot of time as a blockchain engineer. So the reason why I got to this point, like aside from the Bitcoin standard, is that I've seen products that I've built fall apart because of its dependence on shitcoins.
Oh wow!
So what happened was that okay. So one of my products is called, let's say, supply chain tracking using blockchain technology, right? We've been having problems with the infrastructure because it has been unmaintained by that crypto team. Like after 2017, they've pretty much up and left. So now we're stuck with their software that no one's left to maintain, which is kind of very difficult for us. So now I'm trying to see if, like, for that particular product, that I want to pivot it towards Bitcoin. That means having to redo a lot of work. So that's like my first-hand experience of the problems, like the problems of going or using things other than Bitcoin, because I've seen the transition. And actually, like even when I started, I've already kind of predicted that this could happen. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's kind of it's interesting seeing it, how it turned out, and also seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, I find that like a lot of companies that are trying to build a certain product based off of blockchain, they're kind of, they're not really like thinking long term. It's like, all right, this blockchain thing is like popular, Web3 is popular. What can we make to get people to use our crappy product, and we'll make a lot of money? Like, it's not thinking long term. That's why I think, trying to get companies that were initially trying to do blockchain or Web3 or whatever, you kind of have to get them to change their mindset about, like thinking long term, that like, okay, like if you use this blockchain thing, like it's just a blockchain is just a data structure. It's not gonna get you anything unique or new that hasn't already been made through like a database or like a SQL database or something. But like with Bitcoin, it's the goal is to actually get out of fiat and use sound money. Like that's a long-term goal. And it's kind of hard to explain that to companies that are just like looking, that all they see is like quick profits. That's all they want. And there's nothing wrong with seeing profits for sure, but it's, if you're Bitcoin only, you have to kind of think really long term.
It's not even just profits. Like these companies, they're getting funding from these shitcoin marketing budgets. Shitcoins have marketing budgets, and then these marketing budgets go towards paying companies to build like prototypes. Right? So it's very there's a huge incentive for companies to direct their product towards using a particular platform, especially if that platform has a token that they're getting allocations towards. So there's like grants and stuff. Because they all have a marketing budget. Whereas Bitcoin, and there's not a whole lot of funding in Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah.
Either you hold Bitcoin or you try to get like a grant from. It's not easy to get a grant in Bitcoin. You have to be a very, very talented, low-level protocol developer. Like you have to be like core dev level developer in order to get like a grant. But that's like personal grant, right? But now there's already like there's quite a few actually.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Is that like
that's why I started going Bitcoin only. Like even in my career, like finally I managed to get like a Bitcoin only engineering job.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Wow. So that's kind of an interesting story that you actually had to like see a blockchain product failing before you like as you were also learning about Bitcoin before you started realizing the kind of the Bitcoin maximalist message. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I know that you tweeted about this before, but I know you worked on and are currently working on an app where you can actually donate. You can pay your zakat in Bitcoin. Can you tell me more about that app?
It's not an app. It's an existing platform.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a website. You can go to globalsedekah.com where they host crowdfunding activities. Like people, if you have a cause that you want to fund or you want to raise money for, you can list it with them. They do some vetting on your organization, and then like once that's done, you can set like a goal, and then people can donate money to your cause.
Okay.
And if your cause is deemed zakat eligible, then there's like you get like a special tax that people see that this cause is zakatable. So yeah, so that platform has been going like for a while, and then they contacted me about handling Bitcoin donations. So what I did was that I set up a BTC Pay server for them, and then since they're using WordPress, BTC Pay server has like a WordPress plugin, so it's like very straightforward. So they started in Ramadan of 2020. Like within 1 year, they raised like 100,000 ringgit just from that Bitcoin source, just from the Bitcoin payment method.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and just to add, like in Malaysia, all of the zakat collectors, like zakat collection in Malaysia is organized by the official ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're like official zakat collectors by state governments. So that Malaysia has like a few, like 13 states. So each will have like a state government. Islam is heavily institutionalized in Malaysia. So it's not like in the US, right? So yeah. So each state Islamic agency has a zakat arm, like a zakat collection arm. Mm. So and then each of them actually came out with guidelines on how to pay zakat using Bitcoin.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. And if you go to the Kuala Lumpur's zakat collection, mm-hmm. You go to the website, you can actually find in their online payment portal a section where you can add how many Bitcoins you have, how many Bitcoins you have to pay. I'm not sure like how many Bitcoins you have, how many Bitcoins you have to pay. Okay. But there's a section you can add digital asset, and then Bitcoin. But there's also like a lot of like the other coins as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I figured because
it's not just
right. I think starting out, when you're trying to get like Muslim organizations, especially like to take payment in Bitcoin for zakats. I mean, you're not going to get them to get Bitcoin only immediately.
I think they don't really care about that. They just
exactly.
I mean, I think people who hold shitcoins also must be zakat. I mean, if it's above the requirement, then I think they should pay, right?
Right, exactly. I would imagine the same thing applies to a shitcoin as well, in addition to Bitcoin when it comes to that requirement. Yeah. So wow, that's okay. That's very interesting. Actually, I kind of want to pivot to talking about like the scholars in Malaysia and how they view Bitcoin. It sounds like they kind of already have I don't want to use the word favorable, but it sounds like they at least kind of tolerate Bitcoin. Is that right?
So regarding that, like Bitcoin, the treatment of Bitcoin in Malaysia, and the sentiment of the scholars that used to be kind of 50-50. Like there's a lot of scholars that are fans of it. And there are some that are also against it. But what happened was that after Bitcoin was recognized and as being a regulated digital asset, the government came up with like a framework for regulations. So in Malaysia, Bitcoin is treated as a security rather than like a commodity. But it also depends. It's kind of very complex. I don't know. Needlessly complex. It depends on how you treat it. Like you as an end user treat. Like if you use Bitcoin as a currency, then it's no longer security. Then it's under the central bank.
Right.
But if you're buying Bitcoin as an investment, then it's a security, which is actually kind of problematic for a lot of us that are thinking that are dealing with the policy space. In some sense, we don't really want Bitcoin to be treated as a security. It should be like more like a commodity, like elsewhere, like in the US, I think it's more of a commodity, right?
Yeah, you kind of hit a good point though, but like if you're buying Bitcoin on an exchange and you're just using that as an investment so that you can trade for fiat at a later time, then you're not even self-custodying it. So it's just a claim on Bitcoin. So yeah, that would be a security if you're not self-custodying it.
So that leads to the point where the government has no problem with that use case of Bitcoin. And to that effect, the scholars follow that line of thinking. That means within the Malaysian Securities Commission, there is a Sharia Advisory Council. One of the people there, it's like Dr. Daud Bakar. He's quite a big fan but it's not Bitcoin only, but it's like all these cryptos, right? So he's a big fan of cryptos in general, as far as I know. So they've come up with their sort of like hukum on investing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, digital assets, but it's under the Securities Commission. So that means the caveat is that if you're buying it as an investment, as a security, that means it's a security. And since it's a security and it's regulated by the SC, and you're buying it from a licensed exchange, then it's harus.
I see. Okay.
But it's only limited to that. Like you have to buy it from a licensed exchange. It doesn't cover if you just wire money to Binance and then buy it from offshore, or you buy it from, if you buy it from a peer-to-peer or in a peer-to-peer fashion. I'm not sure how they would view that. If you're using Bitcoin as a currency, there's no, as far as I know, there's no. The only thing that I've heard a scholar say is that it's haram. He did clarify it that if you're using Bitcoin as a currency, it's haram for now, but it might change in the future. So there's two treatments of Bitcoin from the Islamic scholars in Malaysia. So once it's legalized by SC, all of the scholars fell in line, but only in that aspect, like as a security, as an investment. It's not as a currency. Yeah. Whereas the currency use case is still up in there. I think that's the more from the perspective of the government, it's a more problematic use case of Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like as a government, they don't want any competition for their fiat currency. So if people start using Bitcoin as it's intended, which like actual money, then that could be problematic for the government or the central bank or whatever. But people are just using it to trade on an exchange, then it's they don't see any threat to that. And I think that from their perspective that kind of makes sense. But it's also sad because people are supposed to like actually use Bitcoin as money, and they're supposed to, most importantly, they're supposed to self custody their Bitcoin, and that's kind of that's kind of hard to communicate with people that don't know anything about Bitcoin and what that difference is, because to an outsider it just seems like Bitcoin is Bitcoin, whatever. Like if you're gambling it on an exchange, it's the same thing as like self custodying it or using it as money.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if self custody is taken into consideration in the Sharia advisory guidelines.
I see.
Yeah, because I think probably most people who use the license exchanges, and there are a lot, like there are. It's just that a lot of the trading is not happening in the local exchanges. Like a lot of Malaysians are trading on Binance, right, regardless of the regulations. But the local license exchanges seem to be they do seem to have like a lot of take up, and they have like a lot of presence. Like you see their billboards like everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't blame people, preferring to use something like Binance or crypto.com to trade, since those are more reputable than these exchanges that might have a higher chance of like going bankrupt or running away with their crypto. So okay, wow, that's I hadn't thought about it.
And the interesting aspect is that Luno's parent company is a digital currency, which and they're having problems. And one of Luno's products is a crypto savings account that is a yield that is bearing yield. That product has been having problems.
I bet.
but the Securities Commission in Malaysia doesn't let Luno offer that product in Malaysia. The people who keep their Bitcoins in Luno, that has quite a good certainty that they're back 1-to-1. So it's actually interesting that the regulator is actually making sure that exchanges are operating on full reserve.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. And I haven't really thought about that distinction and about like governments and central banks looking at Bitcoin from those two aspects. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. That was very interesting. So I guess we're gonna wrap up in a few minutes, but before that, I wanted to ask, what challenges have you and Bitcoiner Malaysia have been experiencing with trying to orange pill other Malaysians? I mean, have you guys tried to set up anything to try to orange pill people? And what challenges do you guys face? Like, what's the biggest FUD that you hear people say?
I mean, a lot of people in Malaysia don't like that people are stealing electricity for mining.
Oh, okay.
So you see a lot of operations like if the police come and seize miners from like an illegal operation, it's like a very visible negative thing that's the only impression that Malaysians are getting on this whole thing. So we've had to do like a lot of education on that regard. I mean, not Bitcoin Malaysia, like it's like all these other associations.
Right.
Bitcoin Malaysia is quite recent, so we've not had to deal with that. Actually, we haven't. I mean, we haven't had really combative people come and and try to like dispute. I don't know. But I mean, personally, like I've had people try to debate me or like debate me online about it, and it's mainly energy. It's mainly energy FUD. It's like an Israeli CIA thing or something, which is kind of I mean, at that point, I can't even be bothered.
Yeah, exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, one thought that I had is that as people are seeing these like miners get seized in Malaysia, and then like the government's kind of cracking down on like people stealing power for mining. Do you think that's going to create a breeding ground in Malaysia for folks there to kind of see proof of stake as like as like this new thing that we should be embracing? We should ban proof of work. and embrace proof of stake. Do you see that being an issue coming up, or am I being paranoid?
Probably like among a lot of young Malaysians who are invested in on this proof of stake coins. Probably, I mean, yeah, but
Yeah,
a lot of the legitimate mining operations are done by like very connected people. I don't think that's gonna go away.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's how Malaysia works.
yeah. So I guess before we close out, I like to ask my some of my guests is do you have any advice for any Malaysian or anyone in general that's looking to get into Bitcoin? Like what's something you wish you knew back then that you could that you know now?
Oh, back then there wasn't a lot of reading material compared to right now. I mean, today you can learn about both the how and why. Whereas back then, I mean, it's mostly like nerds tinkering with stuff. So you're just more fascinated by the engineering side. I'd say an advice that I don't hear a lot and that I don't hear very often nowadays is because you can get like like many of the other kinds of advice like you can just read the Bitcoin standard, like that's like standard advice. Or you can watch Muawiyah Tucker's videos on YouTube. That's a good advice. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're Muslim. Go search for Crypto Ash Reviews YouTube channel and just go through all the videos. But yeah, another the advice that I'm thinking of is that you should try to find people like on the ground, like that you can meet face to face, and then build connections with them, like so that you can actually trade with them peer to peer. Because in Malaysia, a lot of people are trading in WhatsApp groups. Like they're not just using exchanges. There are a lot of WhatsApp peer-to-peer trading groups, and there are a lot of peer-to-peer like platforms. Right? Like some of them, like they don't just rely on centralized exchanges. There's already an entire fragility aspect that is getting baked in there. If you're just interacting with Bitcoin purely online, I mean, it's kind of hard to see what's happening like in the real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think meeting people locally, try to find like local meetups, and then also try to go to maybe like if you find conferences that you're interested in. That's what I did. I went to a lot of Bitcoin technical conferences, like not the more mainstream ones that have like a lot of shitcoin promotions as well. Like it's like even as a non-technical person, I think it's a good idea to go to try and sit down with try to meet Bitcoin developers.
Okay, that's actually really solid advice, and I think that kind of speaks to the peer-to-peer part about Bitcoin is that like you should try to find people in a peer-to-peer way and try to actually use Bitcoin, the technology, in a peer-to-peer way as well, and you do that by finding someone on the ground. And yeah, I actually really appreciate that advice, and I also agree with that advice in that you should try to find a local meetup. Try to find people that are knowledgeable about Bitcoin, especially from a Bitcoin only perspective, and learn from them. But also at the same time, read the Bitcoin standard, read the bullish case for Bitcoin. There's lots of material out there to learn from. Okay, so I guess that I just want to thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, and I feel like I've actually learned a lot. And I've finally gotten my questions answered since I've seen Bitcoin Malaysia come up as a Twitter account. I've had quite a number of questions since they came up, and I'm kind of glad that I got you guys on the show. So I guess before we close out, can you tell us where to find you, like what your Twitter account is or your company or anything?
Okay, my startup doesn't have a name right now. So it's like very early stage.
Okay.
It's stealth mode. We call it stealth mode. I can okay. So my personal Twitter is like I mean, you can just search for Adam Mashrique because my Twitter handle is kind of weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also there's the Bitcoiner Malaysia. I think it's Bitcoiner.
Bitcoiner Malaysia. You can search. Yeah, you can search for Bitcoiner Malaysia. Yeah. By the way, like I'm actually working on a hardware wallet.
You want to tell us anything more about it before you get off the show?
Our goal is to create like a natively multi-signature Bitcoin hardware wallet. That means you need multiple devices in order to sign transactions. The difference is that we're trying to build on top of that root that allows multi-signature Bitcoin transactions to be constructed in a way that you can't tell it apart from a normal transaction. And it's also smaller and cheaper.
Huh. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We're definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah. Like maybe I'm trying to see if I could get like a beta out within this year. Yeah.
Okay.
Not sure yet. But yeah. Inshallah.
Inshallah, we'll be looking forward to that, or at least I'll be looking forward to that for sure. Okay. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, Abdullah, thanks for having me.